I will do a few slides. Alex will do actual few demos related on SPFx in Teams and also in Viva and all of that stuff. But SharePoint Framework, it is the easiest way to build your enterprise solutions for Microsoft 365. So SharePoint Framework, regardless of the name, is not only for SharePoint. It's also for Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Viva and even more in the future. So you're able to expose automatically hosted components and solutions directly in the context of Microsoft 365 with automatic single sign-on. And this comes back on the fact that as the solution is automatically hosted for you, it is running in the context of Microsoft 365 and running in the same tenant as you are or the customer is running the solution. So there won't be any problems with the data moving around between the Azure and also within the tenant as well, because again, component is running inside of the tenant. SharePoint Framework also provides a consistent development experience for Microsoft Teams, for Viva, Microsoft Viva, and for SharePoint Online, and actually more in the future. We'll talk about that one in the upcoming slides. And it's using industry standard tooling. So there it is using Yeoman Generator, it is using web stack tooling, it is all about TypeScript, and of course behind the scenes we're using Microsoft Graph for accessing capabilities in the Microsoft 365. So you have full access on the APIs and information of particular user or in the context of the user. Now, those individual shapes and capabilities, as said, SharePoint Framework is for Microsoft Teams, Microsoft Viva, and SharePoint, and soon even more. So the soon even more will be visible as part of the upcoming Ignite announcement. So I cannot actually share all of those details yet. I would be super excited to show you, but we'll do another demo after Ignite. And again, Ignite was on 12th to 14th of October, but you'll see that announcement happening I think in 12th of October. Now, as we're building SharePoint Framework components and experiences in TypeScript, you can use whatever JavaScript framework you want. Typically, quite often people use React because in Microsoft we use React as the default framework. You don't have to. You can do Angular, you can do Vue, you can do Amber, whatever is your chosen framework. There's a new framework every single week, which is the newest and the most and the best one. Behind the scenes, we're of course using Microsoft Graph for accessing the information. And then we have different shapes and extensibility points across the SharePoint and Microsoft Viva and Microsoft Teams, which you can build using the SharePoint Framework components. And just to be super clear, this is not about necessarily, this is typical when you're building a SharePoint Framework solution and a component, it's not about surfacing pages inside of Viva or inside of Teams or inside of SharePoint. You are actually building individual TypeScript components, which you can then expose in the different shapes and different capabilities inside of these solutions, which is really, really cool. React is fine, it says Andrea on the chat. Now, I wanted to call out and show some teaser pictures also on where you can actually use SharePoint Framework. Just a bit of a marketing message and a bit of a marketing things, but just to call out an example. So of course you can use SharePoint Framework to extend and modify SharePoint Online. All of the UX elements, what you see in these pictures, are actually being built using SharePoint Framework. Even the out-of-the-box capabilities, which you see in this picture, are being built by SharePoint Framework. And that's the really cool thing. So even Microsoft engineering, with hundreds of developers, are using SharePoint Framework. So it is a really, really great capability of extending Microsoft 365. On the left side, you'll see the homepage of a imaginary Relay Cloud tenant. And in there, you can see those individual web components or web widgets, which we call web parts in SharePoint. And you can build individual components, as many of you want. You can also build menus, footers, and so on, extensibility within a SharePoint. On the top right corner, you actually see a teaser on an application page, which is a full page experience within SharePoint Online. So you're able to build those kind of dashboards super easily using React as well, and then accessing LOB data or graph data for surfacing that relevant information for you. And then the smaller picture in the middle is actually a custom form, because you are able to build custom form and experiences using SharePoint Framework. So of course you can do that custom form development using Power Apps as well, but then there's a licensing implications and learning curve and all of that. If you are a React developer or a web stack developer or a pro developer, you probably want to write your form and experience and really fine-tune that end user experience in a pro development way using then TypeScript and React, or again, whatever is a chosen framework. Now, you can use SharePoint Framework also to build experiences in Microsoft Teams. And this is a few examples of those experiences. The bigger picture is the same dashboard as what you saw on the last page, exposed as a personal application in the Microsoft Teams. The interesting thing is there are no code changes needed to make the same component to be available within SharePoint or within the Microsoft Teams. So it's exactly the same piece of code, which you can actually expose in both applications, and actually even more in the future, which is really, really cool. In the top right corner, there's an example of surfacing my sites, because we can access easily the Microsoft Graph APIs in the context of Microsoft Teams with automatic single sign-on. So it is seamless authentication within the context of the user. And then the lower piece, the smallest picture, is actually a messaging extension implemented using a SharePoint framework in the Microsoft Teams. And now, related on the announcements from last week, we actually tested a new location, a new extensibility model. Unfortunately, in our messaging, we didn't really explain what are the extensibility options and capabilities around the Microsoft Viva Home, which will be by default available in the Microsoft Teams for all of the companies. Now, the bigger picture here is the Microsoft Viva Home. And it's basically a combination or evolution of the Microsoft Viva connection bits and pieces, which are the dashboard, the feed, and then the assets. So there's an option of creating this Microsoft Viva Home for the tenants, and by default, it will be in some of the tenants sooner or later. And in that Microsoft Viva Home, those individual cards, what you can see on the dashboard, are extensible and creatable by using SharePoint Framework. Of course, behind the scenes, you will take advantage of, again, Microsoft Graph for connecting to the API. Then the SharePoint Framework component is going to use adaptive cards for rendering the card in that dashboard. Now, the reason why it's a dashboard based on adaptive cards and this kind of a card design is that experience is really designed to be accessible and approachable also in mobile. So this is not only for people who are sitting 8 hours in every single day in front of their computers. It's for people who are working as a frontline worker, walking in the streets, going and visiting customers, let's say doing whatever work in the warehouses and so on. So they are the people who don't sit in the front of desktop, but they need to get connected still on the company information, the task, the submitting hours, or what's the latest news in the company, or getting connected and the company communications, HR details, and all of that. And that's where the Viva Connection mobile experience is really designed to shine. So you can actually use those SharePoint Framework components to provide a Microsoft Viva Connection or Viva experience directly in the mobile experiences. And then on the top right, we can see a few teasers on the different design options in here. Now, coming back on the what's happening in the future, I want to make sure that I have enough time for Alex to do the demos and a quick update on what we have right now. So we've been already having more than 20 versions released of SharePoint Framework, and we started back in 2016 with a relatively small amount of capabilities, and it's been extending more and more across the Microsoft 365. The latest version for production is 1.15.2, which was released in August, and there's a lot of new capabilities for simplifying, for example, API approval workflow for multi-tenant applications in Microsoft 365. There was a new media actions for Viva Connection for the mobile experiences and all of that. 1.16 preview is already out. That's basically a beta version of the upcoming capabilities. That's already out. It's not released in a few weeks ago. Yeah, it was released a few weeks ago. Kind of makes sense in English, doesn't it? But it has the Teams JavaScript SDK v2 native support. It has additional capabilities inside of that as well, and you can already test it out. 1.16 GA is going to happen by end of 2022, and then 1.17 probably in December, January, most likely January because of the holiday season starting in US roughly in end of November, because that's how the business works in US. But a lot of capabilities. We're looking into moving into a quarterly release cycle, or at least 3 versions in a year. And on the bigger picture, you can already see the Viva logo, SharePoint logo, Viva Connection logo, and a Teams logo, which are the current extensibility points for SharePoint Framework. But already as teased, in Ignite, we'll give you even more. So that's the present with the star there, but I cannot go to details at this moment, but it's cool to see additional capabilities in Microsoft 365 where you can use the exact same component without any code changes and still it's exposed in the new locations. So really reusing those existing investments in the most efficient way for your solutions. Now let's move to the actual demo. So that was me, a semi-marketing statement. I'm a product manager. I guess product manager. I need to always rethink my title. But let's me share the stage with Alex. Alex is going to actually show you getting started with SharePoint Framework. This might be super, let's say, familiar for some of you, but we also wanted to show the latest of getting started experience and how easy it is to actually build those components across the different experiences. And Alex is, by the way, great example of one of our MVPs who used to be an MVP and building ISV solutions for customers with SharePoint Framework, but nowadays he's an engineer and has solved, I guess, Alex, you already solved all of the issues which you have submitted as a partner or as an MVP.
Yeah, unfortunately, we needed to roll back one of the fixes, but yeah, other than that, yes.
Yes, good. But anyway, Alex, let's move into your screen. And let's do a quick getting started on SharePoint Framework, just to recap on how easy it is to get started. Take it away.
Yeah. So yeah, as Vesa mentioned, it's really easy to start with SharePoint Framework development. It's based on commonly used web development tools. So first thing, if you're developing the first ever SharePoint Framework app on your machine, you need to install some prerequisites. It's done using NPM, which is also standard for web development. And what you need Yeoman generator, which is Yo, you need Gulp CLI, and you need our Microsoft generator, SharePoint itself. And these things you need to install globally, so they will be available in any folder of your machine. So when these modules are installed, you'll be able to go to the selected folder and start scaffolding your solution. In my case, of course, I have already installed all these prerequisites, and I'm already in my demo folder. And here I can start creating my SharePoint Framework solution as easy as that. So you're just doing yo at Microsoft/SharePoint. When you click enter, after that, our generator will start asking you a few questions like, do you want to create a new solution or add something to existing solution? What type of solution you want to create, what type of component you want to add. And first time when you're launching it, it's taking a time to kind of start the Yeoman generator, but yeah, as you can see, it's asking your solution name, what type of component you want to add to your solution. Let's see, web part, you're providing the default name, you're selecting what framework you want or what template you want to use. Currently, there are 3 templates for web parts. The first one, minimal, you're kind of getting the blank web part with no frameworks in there. You're kind of just need to create everything from scratch. You just have the blank render method and nothing else. If you select no framework option, you will kind of have few methods already defined for you, but again, without any client-side framework. And React one is for React components, so you will have a simple React component created for you, and rendering and this component will be used in render method of the web part. But again, I have prepared everything already, so I have the solution created, and in my case, I'm using React. And let me actually do that, and I will increase the font a little bit too. So this is kind of the default solution that will be propagated for you. If we go to SRC folder, and now let's look at the web parts, because adaptive cards extensions is the next one I want to show. But if you go to the web parts, we have this SPFx basic demo. And I used React in that case, so that's why you have this React component that provides some basic logic with some beautiful, let's say, UI, demo UI with some images, some links, important links for the SPFx development. And if we go to the web part itself, you'll see that you have rendering here to use your React component. You have some code on init to get the environment message, and environment message actually shows you how your solution can be used both in SharePoint and in Teams. So if you have these .context.sdks.microsoft Teams initialized, it means that you're running in Teams. Otherwise, you're running in SharePoint, and also you can detect if you're currently debugging, meaning that you're serving your JavaScript files from localhost, or you're serving your solution from SharePoint Online itself. So pretty standard small parts of the code that will show you how to do the basics using SharePoint Framework. Another thing I want to mention here is if we go to the web part manifest that basically shows our engine, how the web part should be served, when it should be available. Very important thing here is supported hosts that actually identifies where your web part will be available. And by default, when you scaffold a new web part, it provides 4 options in here. So your web part will be available as a standard web part that can be added to the page. It will be available as a Teams personal app, which means that you can install your app to the left up bar in Teams. It will be available as a Teams tab, or in Teams it is called configurable tab. It means that you can add web part to your Teams or group chats, and also as SharePoint full page means that you can add your web part as a single part up page. So basically you have the full page with the only web part on it. So when our solution is ready, you can of course do some customizations needed for your solution. You go back to the terminal, and now we want to basically add this solution to the SharePoint Online. So to do that, I need to run 2 commands. First, gulp bundle, and if I use ship parameter in here, it will basically minify, compile all the code and prepare it for actual release, for actual shipment. If I don't use that, in that case, it means that you probably want to debug your solution and serve your solution from the local host. And after we finish with the gulp bundle, the next step is to run gulp package-solution. And again, we have the same parameter here, either ship or not ship. And package solution task will actually create an SPFx file. And this SPFx file is actually used to deploy your solution to the app catalog. Again, I have already done that. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, you will see that in my SharePoint solution folder, I have this SPFx package that can be actually added to my SharePoint Online. And let me go here, and I will go to SharePoint App Catalog. Let me zoom a little bit here as well. And if you're creating, again, the first ever solution for your organization, it might be possible that you don't have App Catalog yet. In that case, you need to go to your admin center, go to More Features, and here you have Apps. And if you click on Apps, actually the same, in my case, the same UI for app catalog will be opened, but if it's not created, if this app catalog site collection is not propagated, it will be created on the fly, and at the end you will still be redirected to the same UI. Here we can click upload, and I'm selecting this SPFx file that we saw. Open, it's uploading. And the first, what we are seeing here, it asks us is if we want to just enable this app or enable this app and add it to all sites. If you're not familiar, we have this kind of definition of tenant-wide deployment in SharePoint Framework. If your solution is marked as for tenant-wide deployment, it means that you can enable it for each and every site collection on your tenant. And additionally, this feature is important if you're going to serve your solution in Teams as a Teams app. In that case, you need to select this, enable this app, and add it to all sites. So let's enable the app. It is enabled. And now if I select it, there is also this option to add to teams. Let me click on this. And now our solution should be available in Teams too. But first, let me go to my SharePoint site. Let me refresh it. And let me add the web part in here. And sorry, my machine is a little bit slow. Let's go somewhere. Come on. Here. And SPFx basics demo. I'm adding it here. And you see how it behaves in SharePoint. So basically, this is what you're getting out of the box. You have an image, you have information about the current user, what is your property from property pane, and some additional information just listed to showcase how the web part will be looking in your environment. Now let me try to go to Teams, and I will refresh also to see if the app is propagated. And here I'll be adding the same app, SPFx basics demo. As you can see, I did nothing in Teams at all. The only thing I did is basically I went to SharePoint Admin Center and clicked Sync to Teams. And all the magic is based on our manifest. So first of all, we provided this Teams Personal app and Teams tab here as supported host. And if you look at the Solution Explorer, you will see that we have this Teams folder with basic icons. But we don't even have a Teams manifest. It will be created for you on the fly when you click Sync to Teams. But if you want to have some custom manifest, you can do that. You can add manifest.json file in Teams folder. And in that case, when you click on Sync to Teams, we'll just use the manifest from your Teams folder. But in my case, I just use standard one, and the app is available in Teams. I'm adding it. And here is the same solution running in Teams. So I'm running out of time, so let me quickly show the second part, which is related to ACEs. So basically, in the same solution, you can, again, run our generator. And instead of adding a web part, you can add extension, or in our case, you can add, you can add adaptive cart extension. You can select the type of extension, the basic template you want to use. And when you've done that, in your solution, you will see these adaptive cart extensions that provide you, again, the basics for the adaptive cart with the basic quick view functionality and the cart view functionality. And again, as soon as you've done that and you deploy the solution, which in our case have already been done, we can go back here, and in our SharePoint site, you can see the dashboard. Right now, it just has one ACE on the dashboard. But let me go manage Viva connections, view the dashboard, dashboard details, edit. And here I have my custom card in here. And if I republish the dashboard and then go back to the communication site, you will see your custom ACE rendered in the dashboard. And this ACE will be available on mobile everywhere where your Viva Connections app or Viva Home app is served, for example, in Teams, on mobile, and so on and so forth. And that's probably all I have. And sorry for wasting 3
Excellent, Alex.
minutes.
No, it's all good. I talked too much on the intro. And I have to call out, whatever you built there is ready for production now. So there was no additional steps. You deployed them to the app catalog. You finalize the code. It's production ready. Of course, these are not looking super polished, but it's the deployment process for production is as sweet and easy as that. And you can, of course, do automation of that in the Azure side as well.